How you feeling?
All right, thank you. Sorry to be like super high maintenance, have to come to this corner of the room. Apparently you have a MacBook at Ashland, you're shunned to the corner of the room. Feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions, guys. Like, I want you to get your questions answered about this. Is anyone here easily offended? Anybody? Okay.
Chance and Lindsay.
Do we have a safe space room for people to go?
We have a safe word,
What's that?
Constantinople. So if you hear that, just back it down.
Okay, so here's the deal, guys. I love Jesus. He's my personal Lord and Savior. All right? I can't help it. I'd like to thank my beautiful wife here. She's absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you can tell how much we are in just the deepest of love here. That's actually Jance's wife. Look how happy she looks, though. No, in all seriousness, I want to thank my family first. Without them, I mean, they're my rock, okay? I don't know how the hell I did it with this going on, but I landed a beautiful wife, and we make really fucking cute babies. Like, look at that. Like, my son, T-Bone Tyson, his head's almost as big as his sister's, my daughter, Olivia. So, big thanks to them. Love my family. These are a couple of people that I want to thank for all their contributions to my education. These are all people that I've learned from, and the presenters that have presented before and after me are also included on this list. So guys like Jance I learned from, guys like Matt, Judd, I steal Judd's shit all the time and use it in my own program. So I'm going to talk about vertical leap. My whole career started because of my obsession with jumping higher. Believe it or not, about 80 pounds ago, I was a basketball player, a pretty good one. And from a very, very young age, all I cared about was jumping high. I wanted to be able to dunk like Michael Jordan. I had sand-filled weights, you know what I mean? Like the little Kmart sand-filled weights. Kmart's even around anymore? Okay. Anyway, Walmart, like sand-filled weights, I was doing squats. I remember going out on my front porch, loading in an igloo cooler that my dad had. I'd load it with just anything I could find to make it heavier. And I would drop off of my front porch from like 3 feet onto concrete and bounce up trying to increase my vertical leap, doing death jumps. What I'm going to talk about today is specifically towards the vertical jump, but it also applies to anything alactic power related, standing long jump, sprint, things like that. But part of the reason this is very near and dear to my heart is because ultimately my obsession with vertical leap turned into my career, because that's what led me to training, and I grew to like training more than I liked the sport itself, and then I decided to study at the school and then do it full time. But this was just some of the stuff that inspired me. Vince Carter, volleyball. I mean, even if you don't like volleyball, dude's waist high to an 8-foot net. Like, that is just impressive, raw athletic ability. So these are the things that really impacted me when I was younger. This is what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the reality of developing a big vertical leap. We're going to talk a little bit about some basics. We're going to talk about how we categorize loading, and then I'm going to get into concentrated loading, which is one of the best ways to increase someone's vertical in a very, very short period of time. I'm going to give you examples of ways I've done concentrated loading wrong or incorrectly. I'm not so yes, I have an ego, it's massive, but I'm not so egotistical to pretend like I'm always right and I got this wrong several times, and I'm going to share a story of that. I'll give you an example of how it's done right, and then we're going to get into a 10-week case study of 3 NFL hopefuls who were fringe players. They didn't really have a shot. Their only shot was pro day, where the NFL scouts come to check out their physical performance, and they ended up getting to the NFL. Spoiler alert, okay? Now I'm going to start the presentation off by I'm going to pee in your Cheerios a little bit here this morning with a little dose of reality. A little dose of reality here. Not everyone can improve. Not everyone can develop an elite vertical leap. Everyone can improve their vertical leaps, but your maximum height you can attain and your sensitivity to training stimulus, your rate of improvement and your ability ceiling are genetically predetermined. These were some cool studies. If you want to look these up, I'll get the slides out to you later. These were done in Poland in the 80s, and they basically looked at what can you develop versus what is genetically predetermined. And they looked at somatic traits as well as motor abilities. We're talking about somatic traits, we're talking about things like body dimensions. So one of the things they found was that linear body dimensions, like height, for example, are about 70% determined by genetics. No surprise there. You see two parents that are 6'8", oftentimes they have a tall kid, right? But that 70% is just a portion. 30% of your height is due to outside factors other than your genetic heredity. So things like nourishment, stress levels as a child. If you have a child that grows up in an abusive home, they're not going to be able to grow as much because they're constantly stressed. So hormonally, they won't grow as much. So amount of lean muscle mass is only about 40% inherited. Even if you have skinny bitch parents, you can still get jacked, okay? There's hope. Body fat percentage is only 20% inherited. So while you may be able to blame your parents for being short, if you're a fat fuck, you can't blame your parents. You can only blame yourself, all right? And I'm speaking that as a current fat fuck. We're like alcoholics. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Once fat, always fat. I was a fat kid growing up, and I have the ability to put on body fat at a rapid pace if I put my mind to it. So that's all lifestyle stuff. It's only about 20% heredity. We talk about motor abilities, a little different story. So these are really cool. These are 3 separate twin studies from the 80s. Now twin studies are fascinating because, especially with identical twins, because you have an awesome control group. So identical twins are called monozygotic twins. You have one sperm, one egg, they make a zygote, the zygote divides, and you have 2 babies for one pregnancy. You didn't think I was going to get into baby making on the first week day, did you? But what's cool about that is it is 100% DNA match between identical twins. So you can do an intervention for one twin and not do it for the other, and you've got yourself an awesome scientific study. So they did a bunch of scientific studies on these. And they found the maximal strength. This was a 10-week study in '86 with 5 pairs of identical twins. Maximal strength was only about 30% inherited. Okay, so even if you don't have strong parents, you can get strong. Strength endurance, or your ability to tolerate acidity in the muscle and resist it, about 50% inherited. So that was a 20-week study with 10 pairs of monozygotic twins. Here's the kicker. Alactic power, about 80% inherited. All right, so no matter what, basically, if you've got the DNA for it, you're going to be an explosive athlete whether you train for it or not. And if you don't have it, you may be able to improve, but you're not ever going to reach that high ceiling. This is a picture. This is Brandon Brooks, plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, got a Super Bowl ring. This is a classic example of DNA, all right? He came in as an offensive lineman for us, and we did a battery of testing when all athletes came onto campus. And his freshman year was required to do a power clean, a max power clean. Now the strength staff didn't want to do that, but the football staff wanted to know power clean numbers. So since they signed our paychecks, we did power cleans to max that day. He had never done a single Olympic lift in his life. He comes in as a freshman, 18 years old. He's about 6'5", 330 pounds, and you can see the outlines of his abs. So this is a jacked motherfucker, right? This is a bad dude. And he didn't even really lift that much in high school, which is the shocker. You'd expect him to be living in the gym, but no, he was just a freak. The first day he ever did a power clean from the floor. So picked it up off the floor, caught it here, not squatting down to catch it. He pulled it all the way up and like stiff-legged it. Anyone have any guesses how much he did first time ever?
873 pounds.
And now everyone's disappointed.
325.
400 pounds. First time attempting a power clean, okay? And mind you, he's 6'5", so he pulled the bar like this high, right? You can't train that. DNA is part of it. The other thing is high versus low responders, or how sensitive you are to a given stimulus. This is basically a fancy graph of saying some people respond really well to training and others do not. So some people, you may do a 12-week block, and one guy might get 6 inches on his vertical leap, another guy might get a ½ inch. That's just a difference of high versus low response to the training stimulus, or how sensitive you are. What's fascinating about this is qualification level, whether you're an elite athlete at your team sport or a lowly qualified athlete, there are different varying responding levels among all those, sorry, I'm talking too fast. You can have an elite athlete that's a low responder. So he's really good at his sport, but he doesn't respond that well to training. You could also conversely have a novice athlete that's a really, really great responder. These are all things that factor in. When we talk about vertical leap basics now, I don't want to get too much into the physics of this. These are a couple things I'm going to talk about. Basically, you need strength, you need speed, and you need reactivity. You need to be able to produce a lot of force in a little bit of time, and you also need to be able to store and transfer elastic energy. So reactivity is a measure of how well you can transfer kinetic energy. If you really want to get into physics, we could look at how to calculate the potential energy of a vertical jump. Boring. How to calculate vertical jump height from initial velocity. Boring. All right, these are all like fun equations, but honestly my eyes gloss over when I see like physics equations like this. So I put them in here so that you'll have access to them when we pass out the slides later. Are we passing out slides, Malcolm?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll email them so everyone can have it. But you can play around with this. Impulse momentum method. I got these from a site. This is a cool site. It's called thehoopsgeek.com. And it's funny, they have like these little calculators on there where you can answer a lot of like pressing like life questions, like how high would Michael Jordan jump if he was on the moon? Like, kind of, you can just play around with it a little bit. And they also sell an app. It's a phone app. You set it up as you jump, and it looks at your hang time, how long you're in the air, and it calculates your vertical jump from the app. So it's kind of cool. They have some cool stuff on there. This is a force velocity curve. So force is on the vertical force time curve. Force is on the vertical axis. Time is on the horizontal axis. For all athletes, in team sports and otherwise, the goal is to move the force time curve up and to the left. You want to be able to produce a lot of force in a little bit of time. And if we look at the angle that it takes or the steepness of the slope, that is your rate of force development. So we see some people, there's guys that maybe they only lift, they don't jump, they don't sprint. They're really, really strong, but they don't jump very high. It's because they can't produce that force rapidly enough to leave the ground quickly enough. Okay, you have a very short window of time to produce that force. It's the guys that really jump the highest can get it in real quick, and they have a very steep curve on the rate of force development. This is a force velocity curve. Every movement you do can be plotted somewhere on this curve. Some movements, like maximal strength, it's a lot of force, but it's a slow speed. Nobody squats at 1 RM super fast. Okay, yes, it may look fast relative to other people lifting, but it's not as fast as, say, running. And at the other end, we have speed, which would be sprinting. In the middle, power, you have things like Olympic lifts, speed box squats, med ball throws. What's interesting about this curve is that training, every point on this curve has the ability to influence other parts of the curve. So squatting can drive your sprinting speed. Conversely, sprinting can drive your squat strength. Okay? So one of the things we need to do when we're trying to improve someone's vertical leap is work every part of that force velocity curve. We want to do as many movements as possible to stimulate speed and strength at all varying speeds. Okay? For me personally, in my lifting, the biggest change I've ever made in my lifting, like the biggest improvements in a short period of time, was when I stumbled across Louis Simmons and the Westside Barbell Method. It wasn't the max effort work, I was already doing that a lot. It was the dynamic effort work that really drove my lift, because dynamic effort work is going to be kind of in that middle of that curve, and it's an area of the curve I'd never worked before. At the time, I was using 50% of max with some bands or chains, and really focusing on acceleration. And that drove my lift like no other. To this day, if you tell me I'm going to give you $1 million to get your squat as high as possible in the next like 8 weeks, I'm going to rely very heavily on the dynamic effort method, more so than max. Okay, that's what drives my lifts. Drives my lifts really a lot. These are just some exercises that follow different points of the curve. Squats with deadlifts at the top, high force but not very fast. Then we get a little faster, like a heavy prowler push or a power clean. You could also get into like the circa max stuff with Westside, with heavy band tension would be up here, where it moves fast, but it's also kind of a high load. And then getting to the end of the curve with plyos and sprints and jumps and things like that. Now everybody squats and jumps. Most people miss out on the middle of the curve and then the far right of the curve. For the middle of the curve, I'm talking about lightly loaded jumps. So jumps with an empty barbell. Rapid fire squat jumps with an empty barbell. I will often do that going heavier to lighter. So in this block that I use with the NFL players, their week 1 weight was 135 pounds for their squat jumps. Most people go, okay, we did 135 week 1, we'll go 145 or 150 week 2. I did the other way around. I went 135 week 1, 115 week 2, 95 week 3, empty bar week 4. With the reason being, I wanted them to get faster. It wasn't a strength thing, I was trying to influence their speed, so that's why we went heavier to lighter, and that's, I think, something that people miss. Another thing is this bottom point here. So basically that your velocity at body weight at speed, I'm talking about less than body weight jumps. So I will hang bands from above and do assisted jumps. That does two things. One, it reduces the load of your body, or it reduces your body weight essentially, so you can be faster. The other thing is that the bands accelerate you, it changes gravity. On Earth, with no bands, it's 9.8 meters per second squared. If you have bands rocketing you up to the ceiling, it changes the acceleration of your gravity, therefore you can be even faster off the ground. So it trains that pure speed component quite nicely. Now, I just don't really have room to do it here. I need a volunteer.
Here you go.
All right, come on up here. Two things that I look at when I assess athletes. Are you healthy? Do you have any injuries? Okay, good. So I'm going to have you have you squat down like you're about to jump, and then I want you to just hold for 6 seconds. I'll count for it. And then when I tell you, jump as high as you can. All right? Yeah. All right, great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, cool. Now, start with your hands overhead, and I want you to come down as fast as you can, really low, and then jump as high as you can. No pause, just ready? Get jump fast. All right, which felt easier, better?
The second one?
Second one, you feel like you jumped higher.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are two tests. These are two tests. Now you can sit down. Thanks. I pulled these videos up. These were awful. Like this guy just bad. Anyway. So basically, awful. Anyway, he's in somewhere. That's weird. What I'll do, I'll test athletes on a counter movement jump, and then I'll test them on a 6-second ISO squat jump. It's a little bit arbitrary, but typically I want to see about a 4-inch difference. If there's a bigger or less difference, it kind of tells me what direction I need to orient my training. If there's a large spread, it tends to mean that they're super elastic, but very, very weak. Okay, so strength training would be what they need to do to drive their jumps more. If it's really close, like if it's less than 4 inches, it means they're super strong, but they suck at elasticity. They need to be more elastic. We had a guy, a basketball player for us, Kenny Hayes, he made it to the NBA. He's playing in Europe now. He had a 32-inch ISO squat vertical jump, not bad. 44.5-inch counter movement. Okay, he was super elastic, super weak, dude. Like, I mean, when we squatted him, he looked like a drunken baby giraffe on ice skates trying to back squat. It was just the most uncoordinated effort ever. But because he was so elastic and powerful, he was able to drive his squats really quickly. So he looked really shitty at the beginning when we started squatting. But man, in like 6 weeks, he was squatting a house. And eventually, basketball player over double body weight back squat. Yes?
That was the same thing we saw with Vince Carter down at IPI.
Yeah.
He could get a 40-inch box jump with 1 foot, and he couldn't squat 185. I shit you not.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like basketball players are prime examples of that. It's really crazy. Does anyone know who the guy in the middle is? Any ideas? Nobody. Verkhoshansky. Yuri Verkhoshansky. So Yuri Verkhoshansky, the father of plyometrics. Okay, this is the guy that kind of invented plyometrics. These are 2 of his jumpers, Gerard Sorokin and Arkady Slobodskoy. Okay, what was cool about Yuri, he was at the Moscow Aeronautical Institute. This dude took regular ass students and developed them to like master of sport classification in Russia in 3 years' time. Just to give you an idea, that would be like a national champion in NCAA track and field. From regular students, these guys were just going to school there, and he took them, taught them how to do track and field, trained them, and boom, national champion. Okay, Judd, would that be common today in track and field? I know you're awesome, but how many guys can you take just out of school and make them national champions? All right. So that just gives you an idea of the level this guy was at. So the way plyos were born is kind of fascinating. Russian winters are brutal, right? Like freaking 57 inches of snow. Like even the dogs go, "Fuck this, I'm going inside." You know? It's nuts. So track and field athletes are kind of screwed. Like they had nowhere to train for triple jump. So he had these triple jumpers, and he's like, "What am I going to do?" So he found a barbell under the stairs of their athletic facility. James can attest, they're not facilities like this, it's the room where the athletes are. And so he started squatting them in the winter. They couldn't jump, so he started squatting them in the winter. And he noticed that they performed better during the season. And that's kind of how concentrated loading was born. They would squat for high volumes and heavy, and then hold the squats away when they got outdoors and jumped. All of a sudden, that was improving. In the late 50s, he started doing some research. So what was cool, what he was talking about earlier, from a very young age, it was predetermined what you were going to do. The people that were going to be athletes typically were in the sports schools at a very young age. They would advance in qualification, go win their Olympic medals. Then they would go to school to learn the physics, the physiology, and then they would go back and coach. That was the system here. So it was really cool. They had access to all these athletes and testing. So we started doing testing and realized that the biomechanics of the triple jump, there was 300 kilos, so 660 pounds, of force on the support leg in the triple jump at takeoff. And he realized, man, none of my jumpers can squat that much. How can we replicate this in training? How can we improve this? He did a bunch of experiments. They're kind of funny, a lot of them failed. First he tried quarter squats. Just like, I will just put 300 kilos on a bar and have them just go down partway. And it worked for a little bit, but then most of the team ended up with vertebral column injuries, all right? Just crazy heavy loads that they weren't exposed to. Next brilliant idea was to, it's funny, even smart people can be really fucking stupid sometimes, right? Like, we all know that. So his next brilliant idea was like, maybe I'll have my elite triple jumper lay on his back on the floor and we'll put a 300 kilo barbell on their feet, have two side spotters try to balance it as they brought it down into like a vertical leg press. The quote from Verkhoshansky was like, we realized that it was actually very dangerous. He never actually quoted how many people truly died, but I'm sure it had to. So you got guys like this. This fuck stick probably used 2.5 pound bumper plates to make it look like it was a lot of weight, but you know, this was essentially the exercise that Verkhoshansky had his athletes doing with 660 pounds. Little triple jumpers, okay? Then he arrived at this. Wait, does he die? No, he doesn't die. Pondering out loud, maybe it's possible to create the conditions for such a strength effort using the energy of a falling human body. Okay, now before you guys get pictures of people falling out of towers, we're talking about from certain heights. You want to try to use kinetic energy. So take the energy from a fall, transfer it to the tendon to rebound up higher. What they found in the studies was that an athlete that could jump, say, 30 inches, standing from the floor, might be able to jump 36 inches after the fall. So there was a transfer of kinetic energy happening. The really fascinating point was that that improvement actually stuck after a period of time. So after several months training that exercise, now the guy could jump 36 off the floor without the previous fall height. That has some very serious training implications. So that's where depth jumps were born, the shock method, if you will. And that's a huge component of the protocol that I'm going to share with you. But this is essentially what it is. And he experimented with a bunch of different things. You drop off and you rebound up. Yeah, well, that's optional. But he started experimenting with different heights. We do it loaded, unloaded, from really high heights, from really low heights. And what he found was that about 24 to 30 inches of drop height is where your best explosive power, your best jumping ability improvements would be seen, your best speed would be seen. Above that, so strength would be more impacted at 36 to 42 inches. So yes, strength. You can actually drive the squat by using depth jumps, believe it or not. This is actually a weightlifter, Yuri Kozen. He was a 100 kilo class, won the world title in Peru in 71, and he set 6 world records in weightlifting, snatch and clean and jerk between 70 and 72. Didn't think depth jumps could be so useful for the weightlifter. I'm very sorry I did not know about these exercises before. Okay, so it can make you stronger. What about jumping? This is Viktor Senyev, world record in triple jump 3 times. So these aren't just your average slouch dudes. These are world record holders. 3 gold medals, 68, 72, 76, and a very controversial silver in 80. Now, this, I'm going to dissect this just a little bit. You have to think about where he was in the world at the time. Okay, this is Soviet, the Soviet Union, USSR. Food was scarce, right? Everyone was poor, there was poverty. And so he's saying the depth jumps are daily bread for for triple jumpers. Daily bread is what sustains life. Okay, your daily ration is what sustained you as a human during that era. So he's equating depth jumps to his athletic career with that degree of importance. Okay, so again, another one. Depth jumps are an excellent means of training, but in using them, you must use the brain. This cat, javelin thrower, has a complete set of Olympic medals, gold, silver, bronze, world record holder in the 70s. What's really cool about this cat, he eventually married the 1960 world champion female javelin thrower, and they had a baby who also then went to throw javelin in the Olympics. I think that's kind of fascinating. But using the brain, you can't just use these indiscriminately. You can't use them like an asshole. You got to be smart about it. And with, like jumping off of my cooler as a 10-year, or jumping off my front porch as a 10-year-old with a cooler full of weights on the concrete, probably stupid. Okay, probably responsible for some hip arthritis I've got right now. Judd, what was the? I know I already know the answer to this, but I want you to explain. What is the highest height you did depth jump from?
I stood on the rim with a ladder.
10 feet.
Did a depth jump from 10 feet.
Yeah. And he's still here, folks. No, and so they just have to be used responsibly, okay? And correct me if I'm wrong, John, those did drive your training, but it took like a really long time, right? Or did it not at all?
No, it definitely drove my training until I had to have surgery.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Guys, use the brain. On the topic of the brain and programming, we're going to talk about CNS demand. I like to sequence for power athletes. I like to sequence in alternating high and low fashion. There's some activities that are really demanding, maximal sprinting, jumping, anything that's really hard, uses a lot of musculature, or uses a lot of skill, tends to be higher in demand on the brain. Things of low CNS demand, smaller body part weight training, steady state cardio, just mobility, flexibility. Muscles recover quicker than the brain does. It takes about 48 to 72 hours for your brain to be ready for another intensive effort. So if you're doing high CNS stress activities on back-to-back days, you're not optimizing potential results. So I like to separate them by at least 48 to 72 hours. Now, when we get into the concentrated loading, this is basically one of the most powerful tools for advanced athletes that have a high training age. It can range from mild to severe. You can do a mild concentrated load. You could do a really severe one. What we did in this example here is very severe. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, with concentrated loading, the greater risk you're willing to take, the greater the potential reward. All right? So you have to determine, it's a case-by-case basis. These 10 athletes that I'm going to tell you about were all going to graduate college. They all had jobs lined up. Well, one of them didn't. He was kind of dumb, but he was going to have a college degree anyway. But two of the three had, they weren't banking on the NFL. They weren't blue chip stars. I would not do the program I'm going to share with you with the guy who was already going to go to the NFL with the sports skill. These guys, we could do something extreme because worst case scenario, they weren't likely to make it to the NFL anyway. If they ended up getting hurt, they'll just go on and have their careers and be fine in the real world, okay? Risk and reward on this one. Concentrated loading is characterized by planning a large increase in volume of training while holding intensity constant. Some guy on the internet. Quote right there. Volume is one piece of the puzzle here, but you also have to manipulate frequency and intensity. Basically, you want to look at yourself as a training effects DJ. The douchey like DJs. Anyway, you're manipulating volume, intensity, and frequency on a sliding scale. So they're like little tuners on a DJ table where you're tweaking one thing up, one thing down a little bit. If you look at like Shaco's programming, Boris Shaco, very, very high volume, very, very high frequency. A lot of times, you were benching what, 4 days a week sometimes?
5 times a week, yeah.
Yeah, benching 5 days a week, okay, so the frequency's high. But the relative intensity was lower. Yes, Shaco gets up into the heavier weights, but relative to other models, and relative to the amount of volume, the intensity was actually pretty low. Bulgarian weightlifting, it's the opposite. High intensity, high frequency, really, really low volume. John Groves, of Average Bros Gym, would, he was from the family tree of the Bulgarian weightlifting system. Basically, he would go in, he'd work up, just build up to a maximal single, and then shut it down for the day. So we do max single snatch, max single clean and jerk, max single back squat, peace, done. No back down sets, no accessory work, no calves, sure as shit, no forearms and neck. Just do your lifts and leave. Volume's low. Then you look at a guy like Ronnie Coleman, lightweight, baby, yeah, buddy, ooh. Power building, right? He would have a really high volume, really high intensity, but a low frequency. You only train a body part one time a week, okay? One multiple sessions. For concentrated loading protocols, all three of these things can be tuned to high, but only if you do it for a very short period of time. Otherwise, you will short circuit the system and you will get injured. Okay, so in my opinion, in my use of it, concentrated loading is all three of these things being through the roof. Okay? This is a really fancy graph, basically to describe something very simple. You go to the gym, you're capable of benching 225 for 10. By the end of the workout, you're tired, so now you can only do 205 for 10. When you come back next week, you can do 230 for 10. That's basically it in a nutshell. Now, the greater the fatigue you create, this is important, the greater the fatigue you create, the higher the supercompensation response, provided that you create the fatigue within the motor pattern you're trying to develop. So in the context of vertical leap, you need to create the fatigue with alactic activities. Oh my gosh, oh jeez. Oh, went bad.
Good catch.
Sorry, I'm nervous. So you have to create the fatigue with the ability you're trying to develop. For a vertical jump, you have to create that fatigue with a lot of jumping, with a lot of strength work. You're not doing wind gates on a bike. You're not doing 300-yard shuttles. You're not running 10 miles. You're like, oh, I've created fatigue. It doesn't work like that. It has to be within the realm of what you're trying to develop. The timing of the supercompensation is important relative to the next session. So in proper training, you load, you create the fatigue, and then you time the next workout at the peak of that recovery. And if you time it correctly, over time your fitness level will improve. If you time the workouts too late, let's say you wait too long, let's say you do 3 sets of curls and wait 15 days before the next time you do 3 sets of curls. Oh my God. Curls, I'm going to stay at the podium. If you do 3 sets of curls and wait 15 days before you do another 3 sets of curls, you're going to stay the same because the adaptation will dissipate it. And then if you time the workout too soon before recovery, your fitness level will decrease. Okay? That last graph is an important piece of the puzzle because concentrated loading operates on creating fatigue through multiple repeated workouts that you can't actually recover from. You try to drive performance down over the course of the concentrated load. And so most trainers